this isn't an astronomy course that we're doing today. This is
No,
ethnoastronomy, which is a
right.
new um, stream that started in the 1980s, and it's where you're trying to recover sky cultures or create them.
Yeah.
And people do this all the time. I don't think people realize how popular this is amongst astronomers that have nothing to do with paganism at all. And
Mm.
I'll show you an example
Yeah.
of this in a moment.
Okay.
But it's about we used to use the sky as a calendar. We used to use it to as a place to memorialize our ancestors and our deities and all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things that we used to do with it. And because a lot of people can no longer see it, we've sort of forgotten it. And it's a
Okay.
really interesting resource that people could use if they knew what they were missing. So that's kind of what this is about. It's kind of introducing people to how the skies are used. I on Friday night, one of my colleagues, Dr. Shane and Pete, who is Salish, inland Salish, is helping to recover, we're working together to recover Salish skies. Did a
Mm-hmm.
presentation from my astronomy center on what he's recovered from Salish skies and
Wow.
stars that you would probably recognize under different names, but now they are. I'll tell you the Salish stories, and that's I'll show you how that works in a minute. But
Yeah.
it's it is a way of uh if you can imagine, or your ancestors sitting around a fire and the
Mm.
shaman or the priest is standing there and pointing at the sky. And this is, well, I'm using Zoom, they're using the sky, to
Right.
tell their
Right.
story. So that's kind of what this is about.
I miss that about being a very young child, just being out in the front yard, and somehow the stars used to explain life to me. It just, I don't know, it just had a way of settling my chaos in my head. I could lay down and I just, you know, breathe
Yeah.
in deep, and just thank the gods for everything. And thanks to PTSD, I've lost that now. So, but I can always try to find that again. I just, you know,
Okay, so I just checked email and Facebook to see if anybody was sending messages saying they were having trouble finding it or whatever, but I think we better get down to work here. So
yeah, it
let's
sounds good.
so let's do this. Let's share this. I want to start by welcoming everybody from wherever they are from whatever race or ethnicity or whatever. This is all about sharing perspectives. And I want to briefly acknowledge that where I'm coming from today is the unceded lands of the Seashell First Nation. And I'm very grateful to be able to observe and to live on those lands. So Imash, which is their word for welcome. And this is the Pagan Skies Project, which is part of something else that I've been doing for 2.5 years, and what you're looking at right now is a Hawaiian sky, which has been reconstructed. So the objectives today, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to what asterisms are. I want to tell you what has been lost and how that happened. I want to show you what's possible. And then I want to chat with you guys about maybe creating some skies like this. Now, the World Asterisms Project is something that I founded for the RASC, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. This is their symbol, which is an asterism which we created, and it's 4 stars that are all double stars in the sky. We call it the connector because we're connecting people together. And so far, we've got 13,270 asterisms. Asterisms being a group of stars that has a name. That's the original Greek name for a constellation, is an asterism. So constellations are official asterisms, and this includes 448 names of the Milky Way and 2,648 telescopic asterisms, 267 on the list. We know the cultures had this in the sky, but we don't know precisely where yet, but we're working on it. We've examined more than 573 of the world's cultures so far, but I mean, there's 7,000 world languages, so I know we're just in the early days and we've got a lot of stuff to do. My inbox looks like this, and the names for the sun, moon, and planets 1,602 for a grand total of 14,872 so far. We're busy, and this is based on something called two-eyed seeing, which was created by Albert Marshall, who is a Mi'kmaq elder. And the idea is they have a way of knowing things. We have a way of knowing things as astronomers, or just people in Western society. They overlap. So by sharing our perspectives, we both end up with a greater perspective. And the idea is I tell you about the stars and that there is a story. And then if you want the story, then you go to the elder, the knowledge keeper. They tell you their story because it's their story to tell. So that's how we do it. So what we got is skies that people used to use as a calendar or a divination system. We were briefly chatting there about astrology a moment ago, as a navigational tool. This was a big thing in like Polynesian cultures where they were going thousands of miles across the open ocean successfully from one point to another using the stars, when my ancestors were afraid to leave the coastline because they thought the world was flat and they were going to sail over the edge. And it's a place to honor the gods, the ancestors, and your culture. Okay. So what have we lost? For example, the Norse people, we know that they have a very rich oral and written tradition. We know that they were great navigators, that they went all the way across the Atlantic. This is not a secret, but because of churches primarily trying to destroy any culture other than their own, a lot of this stuff didn't survive. We have glimpses of it in the texts that have survived. The most useful ones come out of Iceland, which is the last stronghold and still the stronghold of Asatru and Norse beliefs. So we do have a little bit. So that's what we do know for sure that they had, but it looks like a very empty sky, doesn't it? And that's not true. We know they had a lot more up there. We just haven't been able to nail it down yet. Working with a bunch of professors in Norway and Denmark on this, and we're gradually piecing things together. Here's an attempt from 1886. Somebody realizing we're losing the skies. Let's recreate them. This is someone trying to recreate the skies. Unfortunately, this is not a very good image. It's the only image I've got of this thing, and I've tried blowing it up and I've tried doing enhancement techniques to make it more readable, and it's still not quite readable. So I'm still working on getting a readable version so I can really do something with this. But you can recognize some of these things that were on the other chart in the sky. If you're Celtic, well, we had people that memorize things, Druids, and they passed it on from one generation to the next, and there wasn't a lot of written stuff except on monuments. But then eventually things started getting written down as we started associating with the Roman culture. And we do know something about Celtic skies from the colony calendar. And you see, this is it right here. It was found in the headwaters of the Seine. And it is what used to be a wall calendar with movable pegs so that you could keep track of what day it was and what was happening in the sky, even if it's cloudy. Now, since then, several other similar calendars have been found in similar headwaters, and so we've been able to piece a lot of it together. We know that it had lunar cycles, and we know that there must have been constellations in the sky, and we've got an idea what some of those are, but it's piecemeal. There isn't there are pieces missing, and a lot of it is guesswork. It's the same sort of thing with the Ramesside tables in Egypt. We know about a third of it for sure. About a third of it we're pretty sure, and a third of it we still haven't figured out yet. And for your information, Dr. Frank, who is at the University of Iowa, she's an expert on Basque culture, but every year she produces the Sequani calendar, which is based on the colony calendar, which is a Celtic pagan calendar, if you're interested in that stuff. So why were they lost? Because of this corrosive colonialism and institutions like residential schools. This is the former residential school here where I live on the Sunshine Coast, now gone. Actually, there's a hospital there now, which is on Seashell First Nation lands. And this was about destroying culture and destroying language and replacing it with civilization. And there are versions of this all over the world. And so when we're trying to recover skies, if we're trying to recover ancient skies, we're relying on current elders who are remembering what their elders remembered, or records from the past. And I've got this particular picture here of Mr. Stanbridge because he was one of the few people who was actually sympathetic to the people he was writing about. Most of these people were writing records because they were describing what would be to them a curiosity. They weren't terribly sympathetic. These are explorers, officials, missionaries, traders. And the problem that we have is before 1922, there were no standard star charts. So what they're describing them in terms of what they were taught, and what they're taught isn't standard. So unless you understand all of that stuff, and that's what we're working on here in the project, you have trouble trying to figure out what it was that they were talking about. This is Dr. Shane Pete, who is Salish, and he was with me on Friday at doing a presentation on what he's recovered from Salish skies um, at our monthly meeting of my astronomy center. And he's a great guy, great. And he came to me with this. This is the name of a group of stars in the sky, this ancient text that he was looking at. They said, well, these First Nations people call it this, and it's Sinusura. And he goes, what is Sinusura? Well, actually, it translates as the dog's tail, and it's the name that the Greek poet Aratus used back in 272 when he wrote his book Phenomena, or his poem, I should say, Phenomena, which is about the asterisms in the sky. And it was later Latinized to Sinusura by the Roman poet Ovid. And what it is, there are many interpretations for it, because Sinusura was the name of a nymph who was related to Zeus in the sky, but it's their name for the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor. So don't get the idea either that in ancient skies, if we're talking about Ptolemy's skies, that they were standard either, because they weren't. This is Heniochus, which is the charioteer. It actually means rain holder, which is now the constellation Auriga. And this is the way he perceived it there. But you'll notice there's a star here called the goat. Now, I'll come back to that, but what you have to understand that in his day, chariot racing was a major spectator sport. It was a big deal. There were teams, there were factions, there were riots, gambling going on. And in fact, that constellation was named for every single charioteer, inventor of chariots, harness, whatever, deity that had anything to do with chariots. And it varied from region to region. So what Ptolemy was doing was saying, this is a charioteer general term, because I know that all over my world, it has different names. And there is a chart from the 3rd century, and you can see there's Capella, the star Capella, and the stars around it, and it's a goat, and he's holding a bunch of goats in his hand. That is an even older asterism called Capra and Haiti, which is the goat and her kids. And because it overlaps, they've made it part of the new constellation. And so you're looking at charts all through the Middle and Ages and Renaissance that show the charioteer carrying a goat. And you're going, why is he carrying a goat? That's why, because the old constellations are there. And here is a chart. This is like 1515, where you see Auriga is called Aurigator and Aquila is Vulture Volans. And there's all kinds of different names for stuff that we don't use anymore. Between the 13th and 19th century, many notable astronomers created constellations. It was a frenzy. It was crazy how many different things were created. In the 16th century, there was a bunch of primarily German people who tried to completely erase the sky and make it a Christian sky. We are not going to allow any pagan skies at all. It didn't work. It didn't take, as a matter of fact, the 3 principal people that I've listed here, Schiller, Schickard, and von Zessen, didn't agree on what those constellations should be, which is one of the reasons it didn't take hold. There are other people. John Hill was a famous botanist, but he was also interested in astronomy, and he wrote this book called Uranius, um, A Complete View of the Heavens. And I have a copy of this. It's a wonderful book, but because he was a botanist, he was very upset that his animals, his creatures were not in the sky. So he put them there. He created constellations for them. You see, here's the list. Here's one of them. This is Bufo, the toad. That guy does look like a toad, you know? This is in Libra in the sky. Part of the reason a lot of these things were being created because the people who were doing it, the astronomers responsible, were seeking royal patronage. For example, here's Edmund Halley, and he created this tree down here next to Argo Navis, which is a constellation that's been split up into three different constellations nowadays, called Robur Caroli or Robur Carolinum, and it is a tree, you know, for King Charles. There you see a Polish astronomer Hevelius included on the chart. Charles Hart shows up because Charles Scarborough, the physician of the Charles II of England, wanted to put this in the sky to commemorate King Charles. And you see it right here. It's usually depicted on these old charts as a heart with a star in it and a crown on top. And there you see another name of a constellation that doesn't exist anymore, Serpentrio. Frederick's Glory is another one. This was Johann Elert Bode, and he created this thing to honor his noble family that he worked for. And this is why they were doing it, because these guys are paying my bills. And so I better put something in the sky to make them happy, or they might stop paying my bills. George's Psaltery. This is Abbe Maximilian Hell. In 1789, he's honoring King George in the sky by putting this psaltery up there, which is a type of harp. And actually, it's amusing. This guy is a Catholic abbot, and his surname is Hell. And there is a crater on the moon. It's named for him. And if anyone ever asks you what the location of Hell is, you could tell them, take a look at a lunar chart. It's up there. Here's a Brandenburg scepter. Same sort of stuff. You see constellations like this. This is Gemini, but it's Poland and Lithuania in this sky. And that's because people like this guy here decided it's not good enough just to make one coat of arms. I'm going to cover the entire sky, replace it with coats of arms of all of the different powerful nations in the world. And this is a really hard chart to read because it's a map with a star on top of it, with then his on top of that. It's a mess. So ultimately, 1922, the International Astronomical Union said, that's it. Because the problem is, if I want to share information from my country to your country and we're using different charts, it doesn't happen. So they agreed that what we need to do is come up with a standard sky. And they did, except people kept using the old ones for a while because they kind of liked them and didn't want to let go of them. But that's how we came up with 88 constellations now instead of asterisms. And the ones in the Northern Hemisphere are mostly based on stuff that can be traced back to Ptolemy. And the ones in the Southern Hemisphere can mostly be traced back to astronomers from the 1920s or late 19th century who were starting to try and create a sky because they weren't interested in what the native people saw in the sky at all. They're savages. So we'll give them a sky. And it's kind of a snapshot of science in the 1920s. But they're still not standard because this actually is part of a program that I use called Stellarium. And you'll see there the default sky that they show you is Western, but there's 4 of them. And you'll notice one of them down there is H.A. Rey. And H.A. Rey is the author of Curious George. And he was very interested in the stars. And he went, you know what? I don't like your stars in the sky. I'm going to write a book on how I can make these easier to see in the sky. You can still get this book. It's a good one. And some of the astronomers I work with, this is how they first learned the sky, from Curious George. So, having given you a really fast race through the kind of stuff that we do with asterisms, I want to show you the possibilities, okay? This is a place I like to start because the Hawaiians like A lot of other cultures had problems with their versions of residential schools, and those were meant to erase those cultures in those skies. And in 1976, they created that boat you see there, which is a voyaging canoe, which is the kind of boat that was used to go back and forth across thousands of miles of ocean. And they started looking for somebody who could teach them how to navigate with the stars again. And they found this guy. This is Malpialuk. He's a Satwalese navigator. And he said, you know what? Same stars. All of us all over Polynesia, the stars are still there. You can still use them. Doesn't matter what they're called. I can teach you how to use them. And if you check all of the other cultures in Polynesia, and we're all the same language group, you'll recover some of your constellations because they're similar from one island to the next. But you know what? If you've lost a name, name it again. It's your sky. And that's exactly what they did. Here is a Hawaiian summer sky. You can see some of the constellations that they recovered there. You see Scorpius is the chief's fish line. That's the Maui's hook there. But here you see, this is one of their major navigational asterisms there, the Baylor of Malaki. And you'll see Orion down there. And do you see what the name is? It's the cat's cradle. That's a brand new name. And it's called that because Polynesian children take strings and they do that cat's cradle game. So there it is right there. Now, the picture that I included on Facebook when I invited people to come here was this. And this is an Irish sky, which is created by Alexander Wolf, who creates multiple sky cultures for Stellarium. And basically what he's doing is trying to find themes that seem to be popular that can be traced back sometime into the sky. And so that's why he's got the big plow and the little plow, because it's a very common theme for the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper in multiple cultures, including Celtic world. He's thrown in Lou's sling, which is something he's invented, and I think it's a wonderful one. But he's got the swan. Well, that's Cygnus, but swans are important in Celtic culture. He's got the stone of destiny. He's got the skellings. In a different part of the sky, he's got two constellations that have the name Cuchulainn attached to them. And the thing is, if you're trying to put the entire pantheon up there, why are we repeating things, you know? So let's look at the sort of thing that other cultures do. This is Navajo. And you see we've got the North Star right there. And we've got the revolving male, which we would call the Big Dipper now. And we've got the revolving female over here. And they're constantly dancing around the hearth fire. There's other dancers. Now, I was trying to find a picture of a woman dancing in a circle from above, and that's incredibly hard to do, as it turns out. The best I could do is this picture, which is from National Geographic, which is a dancer at a Arabic wedding. And the reason I wanted a picture of that sort is because one of my favorite constellations is called Al-Thuraya. It's a very ancient name. The translation is uncertain. It's so old. But we do know it's a female diminutive. It's clearly a term of endearment. It's made up of stars of the IU constellation Cetus, Perseus, and Taurus, and which is very common in Arabic skies. They don't depict them in profile like Ptolemy does. They depict it as if you're looking down at them from above. So their version of what we would call Leo these days is a lion viewed from above, and it's much larger. But this, you're looking at the top of Al-Thuraya's head. So here she is, right there. That's the top of her head. That's the Pleiades cluster. And she's got one arm that goes up, which goes to the henna-tinted hand. And she's got one arm, shorter arm, that goes down to the leprous hand. And you could see the two of them there. And so there's the top of her head, Al-Thuraya. Here is the arm at the top. And this is zooming in on the henna-tinted hand here, which is also an asterism they call the she-camel. The reason they call it the henna-tinted hand is so you see all around it, there's all of these star clusters, there's nebula. In a really dark sky, you could see a lot of this stuff. And so it looks like a decorated hand. There's a henna hand. But, you know, if you go down there, the wrist, they called it the tattooed wrist. That's the double cluster. The elbow is Malot 20, which is another cluster. The shoulder is the California Nebula, which looks like this. And you go all the way down until you get to the top of her head, right? There's Index Catalog 348. But the leper's hand, there's nothing around it. This is the whole idea. That the idea, there's one galaxy actually, M77 there. But the idea is it illustrates light and darkness and famine and plenty and good and evil. And she is the balancing force. And all of these stars that she embraces are what they call the auspicious stars. They're lucky stars. So this is the kind of thing that people used to do in ancient times. Let me show you a really recent one. This is Brad and Catherine Templeton. And this is their Vault of Heaven star map for the 2004 Burning Man event. Everybody here know what Burning Man is? Okay.
No.
There. Okay, Burning Man is an event that happens every year where they go out into the Black Desert in Nevada and they have a great big man that they burn, a great big kind of a statue thing made of wood, but they also have all kinds of people from different cultures doing all kinds of interesting things and making pavilions with displays and art. And well, they decided what we're going to do is we're going to take the sky the night for the night that we're having these events, and we're going to relabel it. So you see what they've done here. They've taken Cygnus the Swan and made it last year's theme, and they've got the Dust Devil, and they've taken the constellation Cepheus, which does kind of look like a garden shed falling over, and made it Costco Carportus. And they've got all kinds of fun, interesting things up here. And the fire spinner, there's an RV. The point is the sky belongs to everyone. You could do anything you want with it. It's not like you have to own it. You can still use it as a calendar, a divination system, a navigational tool, and a place to honor the gods, the ancestors, and the culture. And if you want to see how easy it is, this is an asterism that I found in the sky. You could see right there, that's the saxophone. It's in the constellation Virgo. There's a lot of galaxies in there. But I'm looking at this galaxy and I look to one side and I say, damned if that doesn't look like a saxophone. Yeah, I'm gonna make that part of a list. And there are 2,648 telescopic asterisms out there that various different astronomers like me have gone and looked at the sky and said, hey, that looks like, and they share it with their friends. And the next thing you know, we got these lists that are growing all the time where people are looking for these fun things in the sky. And I've got 86 of them. Here's a few of them. I like hats. I've got a Cavalier's hat and Stetson, and there's the Falling Man. So basically, to wrap this up, so we can get talking, what I wanted to do is just show you what is possible, all the different things that you have up there, how easy it is to use the sky and do stuff with it, and encourage people to take this back to their pagan community and wherever that is, and use it that way. Because there's me and my big telescope. Because that's the sort of thing that you can do. I mean, you saw that example there where somebody was trying to recover a Celtic sky, and what they were doing was they were trying to just basically take constellations that we recognize and rename them. That's pretty much what the Burning Man people did too. But you don't have to. You could use those patterns in the sky in a completely different way, which is why I showed you those different cultures and how they did it. It's a matter of taking the time to look up and dream and imagine. So I'm gonna stop talking right there and ask if you have any questions about that. You're muted, Laura.
There we go.
There
Okay.
you go.
So is the ultimate is your ultimate purpose in this project to encourage people to create any kind of connection with the sky, or are you
Yes.
looking specifically for just people doing it for use in modern pagan traditions, or?
the World Astrophysics Project, I am focused on trying to recover ancient skies if we can. You know, we're going after
Okay.
all of the bits and pieces that are out there to try and give people that historical stuff to work with if we can find it. And it's a lot of work, but it's gradually moving along. But at
Cool.
the same time, to this day, people are looking up at the stars and seeing stuff and naming it and having fun with it. And so I absolutely am encouraging all different pagan groups out there to try this. I mean, you can take your kids and take them out and give each of them a pad of paper and say, draw what you see out there. You know, I mean, it is your right to do that. Everybody's
Right.
sky. There is a very famous book that was written by one of our first female president of the RASC, and it's called "The Stars Belong to Everyone," and that's it. You know, but you can also you can use it for all of those different purposes that I outlined. It's not likely that you're going to need it for navigation these days. We have GPS and we have, you know, devices to allow us to do that. You're probably not going to need it as a calendar, but if you're talking about the pagan wheel of the year, say Wiccan wheel of the year, do you realize how closely that is connected to those constellations? Do you realize that the Pleiades rise at Samhain and set at Beltane, and that is deliberate? They definitely put it that noted that because it's part of the growing season. If you're going to the Navajo, for example, they call it Dilyehe, the starlight sprinkles, but they also see the seven mischievous boys. And if you plant your seeds before it sets in April, they'll steal your seeds and nothing will grow. See?
Lovely.
So you have to, and once they show up in the sky and at the end of October, well, then you have to stop planting now because those little thieves are up there, they're going to take it, right? So there's all that colony calendar is a similar thing. It's showing you how you can do a ritual instead of just saying, okay, it's this day and we're going to do these things because we traditionally do these things on Mother Earth here. We can turn our eyes skyward and we can say, and there are these different things that mark this season and what they mean or what they mean to us. And you can make that connection because we're really good at connecting to the earth, not quite as good as connecting in that direction. It's understandable because, like I said, 2/3 of the world's population really can't see the sky anymore because of the misuse of artificial light at night. And don't even get me started. I could go for hours on that stuff because that's one of my things. It's not about seeing the sky. It's about health and safety because, you know, people are misusing light and wasting money doing it. But it's really common for people to come up to my observatory and look up and say, what's that glowing cloud in the sky? And you go, it's home. It's the Milky Way, but they've never seen it. You know, there is Virgo, constellation Virgo is just this collection of stars. It kind of looks like a figure. It's supposed to be a female figure, and Spica, the bright star, that's supposed to be a head of grain that she's
You're
holding in her
great.
hand.
Yeah.
But do you realize the original Babylonian one, Anu-Nitu, she had a head. It's the Andromeda Galaxy because
Yeah.
in the true dark sky, you can see it. And I mean, it's a perfect glowing face for a goddess in the sky, but most people can't see it anymore because they're not in skies where they're allowed to. So I mean, all kinds of stuff you could
Yeah,
do with this.
we've been working pretty extensively on this kind of thing in Ariadne's tribe for about 6 or 7 years now. We started with the information that the Uppsala people, Uppsala Archaeoastronomical
Yep.
Project, we started with theirs, and we've based our sacred calendar on a lot of the stuff that we've taken from them and correlating with tidbits that survived the late Bronze Age collapse into Hellenic times. So actually several of the festivals in our calendar are based on the heliacal risings and settings
Right.
of stars.
See, the reason that astronomy started was because it was preceded by archaeoastronomy.
Right.
And it's relatively easy to take Stonehenge or this house and align it with things, because you
Right.
look up at the sky, there's 4,000 stars in the sky. You can come up with all kinds of alignments that are meaningless. I mean, this house wasn't built and meant to be aligned to anything. So the next step is, let's find out what the culture was looking at.
Right.
And then you can say, then that is a deliberate alignment, because we know they were interested in that. And that's the kind of thing that we're doing with the colony calendar.
Yeah.
And so I work very closely with archaeoastronomers too, because we support each other in this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and there are so many gaps to fill in that we're just having to do that ourselves, like
Yeah.
what makes sense.
Do you use Stellarium?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's
Michelle, do you know what Stellarium is?
helpful.
No, sir.
Okay, let me show you. I had a feeling somebody was not going to know, so I was going to bring it up.
Yeah,
Here we go. This is Stellarium. Now, Stellarium is a program that shows you the sky from any point on the Earth at any time of day. So this is my view of the sky right now. But if I go and bring up the time thing here, I can take you into a night sky tonight. You can see what's going on. I can give you constellations. I can, show you all kinds of interesting things. But the other thing you can do with Stellarium is you can look at other sky cultures. So let's look at an Arabic sky. There you go.
Oh my.
There you go.
That is neat.
So Laura could look at, ancient skies and get an idea of the sort of stuff that we're doing. It's a free download, and it's easy to play with. And if you need someone to teach you how to use it, I mean, hi, I can do that. So this is something I use all the time. And you want to know what the ancient Egyptians saw, or you want to know what Ptolemy's sky looked like exactly? This is what we do. We create these sky cultures and put them onto this map so that you can do that. And you can also run the clock back so you can see what the stars look back at that time in history, because stars all have velocities, they all move, and the shape of these constellations is gradually changing. So I got on another presentation, I've got a great slide where someone has taken the Big Dipper, but they've run it from 100,000 years ago to 100,000 years hence. And you can see how it changed the shape, So it's, there are ancient Chinese star charts that are very detailed, and we know they had observatories, not with telescopes, but they were designed so that you could measure things, and so they were very precise, and they don't match the sky anymore because the stars have moved. So anyway, this is a way to take this and like you say, Laura, make use of it. Refamiliarize your people with the sky. Use it as part of your ritual. Use it to commemorate people. Use it just to have a lot of fun, and I think it's a useful tool if you know how to do that. And if people want to know how to do that, that's something that we can do here at the project. And so I said, okay, let's start this and start a conversation going and plant a seed and see what happens. Let people spread the word, and so they can see what we're doing here. And if you are interested in further developing a sky that you've already done, or you want to make one because you haven't got one, we can help you do that, because there's all kinds of ideas that we can show you. It's the project is all free. If you go to the resc.ca website, go to the World Asterisms page, they're all free downloads. They are regularly updated. I've gone through 16 editions so far this year. I haven't uploaded 16 yet. It's sitting in my outbox. I have to do that today, but it's got the handbook that shows you what of the history of all of these and the cultures and the names as far as we've been able to take it. We've got lists that show you exactly where to find them. We've got the resource list that shows you who to go to find the stories for these things. So yeah, it's meant to be a free resource. There have been a number of people who came to us and said, you could make this into a book. Yeah, I could take it to Springer Publishing right now and charge people hundreds of dollars for this. Not the point. The point is we make this available to researchers all over the world and share it. And they're really excited about this. The Australian team that's been working on this for 20 years donated their entire list to us. They said, about time someone's doing this. Same thing with the South African Astronomy Association. Same thing with, well, I could go on and on and on. They said, yeah, let's do this. Let's share this. So it's a huge shareware. It hasn't cost us anything to do this except for the Google Drive that the RESE pays for, and it's all sweat equity, but we're all having fun doing this. So that's kind of the idea behind this, is to get to make this available to people so that they can do this if they want to, and so we can connect them with the expertise to do that.
Yeah, I will definitely be taking advantage of that resource. The Minoans were an indigenous seafaring culture.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of comparison work we would like to do, just to get some ideas. Obviously, we can't, we don't have any way to accurately reconstruct what the Minoans did, but we can make some educated guesses and come up with a system, excuse me, a system that will function in the same way that theirs did.
The important thing is, okay, everything evolves, everything grows, and I've just told you the skies change. So you're going to have to adjust things because the stars all have velocities. So,
I mean,
if you're interested in doing that Minoan stuff or anything else now, then the important thing is not trying to recover stuff and hope that you find it. That's wonderful, but it's like, so if you need something, make it, do it, put it up there. You create your own sky. Why not? As long as it's functional, like you say, for what you're doing. So
yeah, it needs to function. And like some of our, and this functionally, we are a spirit-led tradition, and so we're having to do a lot of this actually in concert with the deities. And in some cases, they've been like, yeah, whatever works. And in some cases, they've said, hey, you need to do this the way it was done in the Bronze Age. And so, for instance, the festivals that we have to begin and end the sailing season on our sacred calendar are set at the time of the heliacal rising and heliacal setting of the Pleiades during the Middle Bronze Age.
Right.
Because if we tried to do it now, it would be actually backwards from the way it was.
Yeah, because the Earth
4,000 years ago,
like an old top, and what is now the North Star 4,000 years ago wasn't. That's something you have to take into account as well, and that's a valid reason to do this, because all of our pagan traditions honor ancestors, and I mean, actually, you look at Afro-diasporic religions, it's kind of like you go from someone passing on to them becoming an ancestor, to them becoming semi divine, to them becoming part of the divinity, right? It's all connected, so yeah. Anyway, Michelle.
Yes.
What do you think?
I think my little world got blown apart. That is so neat to be able to see that and look at the different constellations, or I can't remember what you called them, but the different ones in the different skies and the different variations. That is so neat. I'm gonna have to do more looking into that. I really like that. I kind of found a new hobby thing,
It's like I said, Stellarium is a good place to start. It's a free download. It's easy to use, and you can explore all kinds of different cultures. They have some cultures that don't show up because they're in the background and haven't been officially approved. One of them is Tolkien. You can get dwarvish skies. And they're really neat. There are the Irish sky actually that's where it is. You won't find it on the main page. You will on my Stellarium because I've taken them out of their wiki page and inserted them into Stellarium. You could do that so you could see them even though they're not officially approved for use. There's some that are in progress that you can do that with. But ultimately you could create a sky and put it on Stellarium. That's what it's there for. It's another one of these free things where they created it to make it possible for people to do this sort of stuff. So yeah.
I'm just, I love it. I really do. I'm very thankful I took the time to come today.
Well, we're going to keep doing this. This is just a start, an introduction. I'm planning to like do this on a monthly basis and invite people to talk. After a while, we'll probably develop a bunch of a regular audience where people are going to be working on stuff like this. But if you're interested in this, or you know somebody that is, do have them get a hold of us because that's exactly what we would like to see happen. And again, this is about creating skies as much as it is recovering them. You know, it's perfectly valid process to it isn't a sky that you're not allowed to touch. Or people are naming stuff all the time, so you know it's meant to be used that way. And I mean, there's billions of stars. It's one of the things that I do basically. If you go to space, if you're an astronaut, there's been like 700 of them so far, and you look back and you see that very thin atmosphere, and you realize how fragile things are down here. They all come back with something they call the overview effect, which means they come back with a whole new respect for the environment, all of them. You and I aren't going to space, but I can do the next best thing. I call it the underview effect. I can show you the scale of the universe. I can show you what's out there with a telescope and by doing this kind of work and give you a whole new respect for things because you can see how small you are compared to all that stuff out there, but that you fit in, right? So
Exactly.
this is the underview effect.
That kind of actually puts things into perspective for spiritual aspect, considering I'm just embracing that as well.
Yeah.
Being able to sense the stars and name them culturally and from different points of view seems to also help me with my spirituality. I'm a neophyte shaman. I'm trying. I'm having a hard time doing it, but I'm learning. and I really sense that star issue. You know, it makes there's like as a map out there for me in my mind, and being able to put it on paper or on something for myself would really be beneficial. Because it's like I know where I'm supposed to be, I know where I'm going, I know what's going on, but somehow I just can't find it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are meditation systems in the Chinese skies. They are completely composed of asterisms, over 300. And there are meditation systems where you'll choose an asterism like, and I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember the ancient Chinese for the name for the Big Dipper, but they had a name for it. It wasn't the Dipper, but you start at one end and you meditate, and then you go to the next star and meditate. You go into the sky and you go from star to star meditating until you've gone through the entire path. There's all kinds of systems that you can do like that. So that most people don't realize they can use,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah. it just opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah. This is about giving people more possibilities and perspectives, basically, allowing them to see how all of these different things overlap. The Minoan stuff, a large part of what we've been doing here is reading papers and presentations at conferences on archaeoastronomy, because they have finding sites and they are finding implements and tools and statuary, and then they are now using tools to figure out what those alignments are, and now they're reaching out and saying, so are these alignments, are they valid? Do we have something here? Is it just a coincidence? And it used to be they figured that Stonehenge was a place where they did solar stuff for the summer solstice. And then when archaeologists started digging stuff up and finding out the remains of feasts and stuff there, they discovered that what it was principally used for was at the winter solstice. So the archaeological aspect is definitely a part of this. There's no question about it. We work hand in hand together with this stuff, but making discoveries all the time. It's wonderful when you find a piece that you didn't realize. It's some days you hit the jackpot and you get hundreds of things you can enter. You get a whole new view of the sky, a perspective. Some days you go along and you go, there, that's what I've been looking for. That piece there, that fits with that one, and now it makes sense, right? Like I was doing with Sinusura with Shane in there. You just need somebody to point out where that piece fits, and suddenly it all works, So yeah, it's detective work, which I used to do because I did 36 years in law enforcement, but now people aren't running at me with knives and guns. This is better. So anyway, I have recorded this and I'm going to post it so that people can see it and see what the conversation was and what we're doing. And I expect that we'll probably draw people to another meeting. I haven't chosen a date for it yet, but it'll probably be in January. And I'll let you know.